Hey everyone, this is Molly from EGM, and I'm here today to show you the first portion of Dark Souls 3. So of course, up to this point, we have seen, I'm going to say quite a bit of one of the areas of the game, which is the Wall of Lothric, if I am saying that right. But recently, aka last week, I had the chance to play the game from the very start. So I wanted to kind of show you like what you're going to encounter before you get to that Wall of Lothric area. But of course, you know, it wouldn't be a From Software game or a Souls game if we weren't starting off in the character creator. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but I did want to go through and kind of show off some of the options that you'll have when making your character. So of course, these are the starting classes, and I chose the Herald because I kind of like the, if you want to say, paladin style of character, you know, fighter wears armor but also can do like healing spells and holy spells and things like that. The problem I'm going to run into in this gameplay video when we watch me play is that I am not used to playing with a spear in Dark Souls. So yeah, I do not do as well as I should be doing because I'm more used to typical like short sword. So you know, this is some examples of, I guess you could say, races in the game. Some interesting choices, and of course, you know, I'm just showing you the basics of all this stuff, but you can go in later and all of the super customization options are there. Hair color, brow, beard, eyelashes. Yes, you can give a beard to your female character if you want to, as is the growing trend among character creators. Something I personally love, because I just love not having those limits, is that there aren't really necessarily guy options and girl options. There are just plain options. Some tattoos you can pick through. I decided, for whatever reason, my character here had been cursed and had the curse written on her face. So that's what I'm doing right here. And for some reason, I tend to always go with this kind of hairstyle when I play Dark Souls games. Or so to say, Soul games, period. And most often, white hair of this style. This caught me off guard because you have to actually commit to them. Yeah, like I just did there. So that's something to keep in mind when you get the game. It won't be a while, but you know, when you do. So anyway, I'm getting started. You're not going to see, there was the cinematic that came out pretty recently, you know, that Bandai Namco had released. So you would see this at the beginning of the game if you're playing normally. But since you've already seen it, and for the purpose of time, I cut it out. So one interesting point is, you know, compared to the original Dark Souls, you kind of don't have your character, you know, decaying, if you want to say that, anymore. You know, going to the alternate version of them once you've died and you're no longer in human form. So it's kind of funny to see me coming up out of the grave there. And of course, like any sane person, I reversed my y-axis to have it be inverted. So here we are in the beginning cemetery. This is where you start off. Very soulsy. It's kind of comforting to me to come back to this style of game after Bloodborne. To be fair, I haven't gotten through Bloodborne nearly as far as I should have. I've beaten Souls or Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2, but Bloodborne I haven't gotten through. And I mean, I don't have anything against the game, but one of the things I found is just I really prefer this kind of fantasy style to the more Victorian Gothic style of Bloodborne. So for me personally, I love coming back to this. Well, I know some people out there, you know, appreciated the change. and don't necessarily want to go back to this, but like I said, I'm not used to using this weapon. I want to try to be a little bit different. Okay, so the Ashen Estus Flask. Now, this was very interesting to me because I have tried as much as possible. It has not been completely successful, but I have tried to to go dark on parts of this game because I don't want to spoil any more than I have to before the game comes out. So if the Ashen Estus Flask had been talked about before, I didn't know about that. And so what that does is, whereas your regular Estus Flask will heal your HP, the Ashen Estus Flask heals your FP. Now, I shamedly don't know what FP means in this regard, and I feel like that hasn't been used before in Souls games to refer to your magic points, and if it has, well, then I totally suck, but... So your FP are your magic points, and the Ashen Estus Flask will refill those, which, as any longtime Souls player knows, is a pretty big deal. You know, especially coming from the original games, where it was kind of like if you run out of magic points, you're just done with that for now. And there will be an interesting trick you can do with the Ashen Estus Flask that I will show you later in this video. So this guy was kind of hidden off to the side, so he was definitely not a you have to do, you have to fight him kind of thing, but he kind of reminds me a little bit of the crystal monsters from Dark Souls. I'm trying to think if there were any in Dark Souls 2 or not. It's funny because, at this point, I can remember a lot of things about Dark Souls, but I've totally spaced on what Dark Souls 2 even was for so many things. It's a pretty basic fight, I mean, at least if you've done any Souls games, he was not difficult at all. And I have been using the new sword art kind of thing. So if you see when you're two-handing the spear, not like that, but I think that kind of stab right there might have been it, where instead of using the R1 or the R2 for doing your attack, you use the L2, I think it was. And it'll do whatever your specialty is. And for the spear, it's a more concentrated, long-reach stab that can do more damage. No reason for that. I just decided to go up the hill. These messages here, if you've played Souls before, all these messages are just like, here's how to attack, here's how to do your heavy attack, here's how to roll. That kind of stuff. So there's nothing here that you're really missing by not seeing messages. See, for example, like that. So we come out to this pretty gorgeous view. Not that you ever get to those mountains, but, they are out there somewhere. And this, of course, opens up and kind of shows us, some very trademark Souls scenery, and then our first bonfire. So we get a rest emote. And so for now, all you're seeing is the leave option for the bonfires, but we're going to be adding to that very quickly here once we get a little further into the beginning of the game. My horrible attempts at parrying, it's been a long time, so... And, Bloodborne doesn't have parries like that, so, forgive me for being completely rusty on my parries. And I tend to, one of my bad habits, like you'll see me do it throughout this, is I tend to sometimes trade hits too often with like lower level characters. Like I'm willing to just take the hit from them if I get the hit on them, and that's something you should never do, because you should never underestimate any enemy in a Souls game. There we go. That was a proper parry. And that, of course, was the heal aid, one of the holy arts in this game. I'm really curious, of course, to see, you know, how all those things go, spells and everything, because as the games have progressed, the levels of spells and the diversity in them and what you can do with them has progressed. So, curious to see what they do for Dark Souls 3. With an arrow kind of like sticking through my head. I get impatient sometimes, and this is one of those characters with the bad guys with the spear and shield. They just drive me crazy. And then Dark Souls 1, definitely, and probably 2, you know, after all, you get really good at parrying them, so it's not a big deal. And you kind of bait them and then do the parry. But I was just getting impatient here. So I'm going to do a jump here. I'm not going to make where I wanted to make it, but it's traditional, at least with the Xbox controllers, hold B down, so you hold circle down on the PlayStation controller, and use your analog stick to run, and then push in to jump, and that, of course, was your low attack as you're diving to do a diving attack. So now we come to this guy. This guy's interesting because, you know, in Demon Souls and then Dark Souls, and I am spacing on how Dark Souls 2 did it, but you had these kind of bosses at the beginning of the game that were pretty much optional. You know, like you would fight them, and if you lost them, that was okay. So you'd move on the game and you know, whatever. But this is a boss that's not optional, because when you come in here, he is in here and there are doors and the doors are locked and there's nothing else to do but pull this sword out. So it's interesting, you know, so for any new players, this could actually be a pretty difficult battle, like right off the bat. For a traditional Souls player, it's not too hard. I say that, and I'm gonna die here in a minute, you know, but he's really, if you know what you're doing, he's not super difficult. I get really off on timing of my rolls too. Like after a while, like if I haven't played for a bit, I tend to roll way too early. It's one of those things that like you just get back on the swing of things when you're playing, but when you first come in, you know, I think that you're kind of conditioned by other action games that have rolls where, you know, the roll is something you just do early, whereas this, you really have to time it according to what style attack they're putting out. And for some reason I decide I want to try to equip the firebomb there in the middle of the fight, which was a dumb idea because, as always in Souls games, that menu screen does not pause the game. This is me just really poking at him. There's no hope. And this is something you're going to see more of. You know, like, obviously we haven't seen enough of the game to know what's going on here, but on the wall of Lordrith, there's an enemy like this who was like a regular enemy, and then if you got close to him but didn't kill him right away, he kind of, these black things came out of him and turned him into a much larger creature. So we're seeing that here too with Gundyr here. So I'm really curious to find out like what this is, like what is the storyline connection and what is happening to these guys. So there's my death. I mean, it wouldn't be a Dark Souls video without at least one death, right? So. I'll go down and do what I should have done outside of combat, and that was equip my fire bombs. Like that. See, I trade hits, and I shouldn't be doing that. I tried this jump multiple times and never made it. I think I'm just like not great at jumping in Dark Souls games or Souls games. I guess, well, because Demon Souls didn't have jumping, right? So I guess saying Dark Souls games is still correct. And of course now, because our boss is active, we have a fog wall or door. Go over and grab my souls. Get stabbed by the giant axe. See, like that. Like, I'm just... It takes me a while to warm up to the proper rolls again. I know look like I'm doing terribly, but don't worry. I am going to beat him this time. Stop getting punched in the face. That was way too close to him to do that. So here the black guy comes. It looks like an animal. I mean, obviously, probably like a demon or something. The one tiny little hand holding the spear and the big hand just dragging him on the ground. This is that point where like you have just one hit left and it's all you need, but you just know you're going to do some stupid thing that will get you killed before you get that one last hit in. So, Air of Fire destroyed. That's interesting. And we get a coiled sword. Ember restored. So there's a lot of things going on. And you'll notice now that up there near my life bar and everything, the little box there is now kind of on fire. And so is my character. So what does that mean? It's very interesting. Because it doesn't seem to be the Covenants. So, you know, what does that mean? And we also got a coiled sword, which is going to have a bit of use here in a few minutes. Which I already knew that. So we're out here, we're going to make our way up the hill a little bit more, and there's going to be this big building on top that we're heading to, but first a few other guys. I'm way too far away. See, I just get super impatient with these guys. Homeward Bone, of course. Anybody who's played Souls knows about those. I said, I mean, this area feels very, you know, it feels to me like, you know, original Dark Souls. You know, opinions on Dark Souls 2 are complex. You know, obviously, I liked the game much more than a lot of other games out there. They are just a fantastic game, but in terms of just the Souls series, I was very let down by Dark Souls 2, and everything I'm seeing so far in this game just takes me back on an emotional level to the original Dark Souls, which makes me happy. You know, we'll obviously have to see if that holds up through the entire game and if everything is that well designed, but it's just like you feel very low texture grass. You feel just this depth and design to these areas that I don't think was always present in Dark Souls 2. Wouldn't be a Souls game without a dog to attack you, and obviously at some point we're gonna have to find a spider. Nowhere near as good as Quelaag. She is still the reigning queen of From Software Souls spiders, but you know, that's one of the trademarks that has to always be in these games. So I'd look at the architecture because there's going to be an interesting little thing coming up here that I was curious if, you know, I was seeing anything I recognized, because as soon as we walk in here, Firelink Shrine. Now, isn't that interesting? You know, for anybody who's played Dark Souls, of course you know the Firelink Shrine. You know, that was the kind of, like, I mean, not the starting area, but that was the first starting area of the proper world of Dark Souls. So, like, is there a connection? Is it just like I mean, like, it's very interesting to me for them to reuse that name. You know, I mean, you could have something very similar if you wanted to just pay homage to the original, but when using the exact name, is there a reason? Like, Souls games are something that you know, there's a lot of justification in pondering those kind of things. So could this have some sort of relation to the original Dark Souls? Is this, you know, a future thing, a past thing? Is it just, you know, the name? And also, I didn't look at it, but right back there when I went past it, there was what looked like the body of a giant. A very Dark Souls 2 looking giant.
Ah, another one roused from the sleep of death. Well, you're not alone. We unkindled are worthless. Can't even die right. Gives me conniptions. And they'd have us seek the lords of Cinder and return them to their moulding thrones. But we are talking true legends, with the metal to link the fire. We're not fit to lick their boots.
Okay, one step there, let's do it here. But yeah, so like I'm wondering if there's any kind of connection, or if it's just, you know, I mean, it's one of those kind of things, like, I think in gaming, you can't always just assume connections, like direct connections there. Like, you know, they love to just kind of reuse ideas and concepts and names and stuff, but.
Welcome to the bonfire, unkindled one. I'm a firekeeper. I tend to the flame, and tend to thee. The lords have left their thrones, and must be delivered to them. To this end, I am at thy side.
So, the Firekeeper here is
Very well.
Dark Souls 3's, you know, Maiden in Black, if you will. Still not,
From these sovereignless souls.
You know, still not as lovable as the Maiden in Black was, but she will have to do. So, of course, leveling up, you know, this is a very old hat thing for any Souls players. And you can, of course, get, like, the help options for seeing, like, what everything means and stuff, so. But, so, you know, the interesting thing here about the Firelink Shrine is you're going to see, so, you know, she's here. I should have shut up, I'm sorry.
Ashen one, bring me souls plucked from their vessels. Farewell, Ashen one. May the flames guide thee.
So, gonna use a cold sword I got a minute ago. Put it in here, create a bonfire. Oh, and there's new options here. Attune spells, that's just to pick like what spells you have active. Organize your storage box, of course, is storage. Burn undead bone shard, not totally sure yet what that's going to be in this game. But so, okay, so she's here, and I'm going to come up over here and meet an item vendor.
A pleasure to make thine acquaintance, Ashen One. I am but a humble handmaid of the shrine. Weapons, armor, trinkets, and spells. I've lots of little things to ease the burden of a weary traveler. And yes, I'm undead too, but not so charitable as to give my goods away. Ashen One, fetch souls and bring them to me. As is thy wont? No?
So there's also, to my left, which you'll see in a second, there's a blacksmith. So they've already kind of set up Firelink Shrine here to almost be like the Nexus in Demon Souls. You know, a place you're going to be coming back to quite a bit, and it's going to be a hub for you to get things done. You know, whether it's upgrading weapons or upgrading yourself or buying weapons and items and stuff. So
Be sure to bring more souls.
you know, definitely feels a little bit like a callback to the original Demon Souls to me.
Newcomer, I see. I am Andre. I serve at this shrine as a humble smith, forging weapons. You're in search of the Lords of Cinder, I trust. A toilsome journey, I'd wager. You'll require good arms. Let me smith you weapons. I am a smith, such is my purpose.
So, okay. You're going to notice a lot Estus. Now, what you can do here is you can change the allotment of how your Estus flasks work. So, I had originally had 3 Estus flasks, and I found that Ashen Estus flask. So, I can now move that to be a traditional Estus flask and have 4 of those and 0 of the Ashen ones. Or I could, for example, move them all over to Ashen and have 0 Estus flasks. So that's a really interesting new option here where you can kind of, you know, ration out, like, which one you want more uses out of. Because if you're maybe a magic user, for example, it might be more important for you to, you know, be able to refill your FP more often than not. Whereas if you're a warrior, that might not matter to you, so any Ashen Estus flasks you find can be moved to being regular ones. So here we have the 5 thrones of the Fire Keepers, or Keepers of the Flame, I think I should say. And, you know, when I saw these, I couldn't help but think of course, the lodestones, not lodestones. Oh my gosh. The stones from Demon Souls that I'm forgetting. Where there was 5, supposedly 6, supposed to be 6. One was broken to the Land of Giants, but there were 5, and they took you to different areas. And I am totally forgetting the name. So while you listen to this man's story, I'm going to look it up.
All that unkindled, and a seeker of lords. I am Ludleth of Corland. Look not in bewilderment as I say. I linked the fire long ago, becoming the Lord of Cinder. If substantiation be thy want, set thine eyes upon my charmed course. This sad cadaver, no need to be cold. Have a closer look. Knowest thou of our purpose? 5 thrones will take 5 lords as kindling for the linking of the fire. The fast fading flame must be linked to preserve this world. A reenactment of the first linking of the fire. So it is, I became a lord of Cinder. I may be but small, but I will die a Colossus.
They are, of course, archstones, by the way.
Treat the firekeeper not with discourtesy. She is much like thee. Prisoners both, kept to link the fire.
You know, after a while of playing so many video games, there's a lot of names of stuff to remember, and it is not always easy to recall what things were called. It's okay, so I'm going to use this in travel, and there's actually, at this point, there was no way to get anywhere else except for doing this. So, you know, as an old school Souls purist, I've kind of mixed on the idea of fast travel coming to the Souls games. But like I said, this kind of gives it a little bit of the feel of being like the Nexus in Demon Souls, where, you know, you unlock one area, and then you travel back and forth from the Firelink Shrine to there, and then you probably unlock another area, and you can do the same thing. So I'm curious to see how that's all going to play out in the end. You know, is it going to feel... Still doesn't feel Soulsy? It's going to feel more Demon Soulsy? Is it going to be kind of a combination of both? And we arrive here in this mysterious little room with its gargoyle kings, it looks like. Come over, open the door. Soul's going to have the best door opening animations. And what did we find? The High Wall of Lothric. So you guys have all, of course, seen this by now, I'm sure. If you haven't, there's videos out there of people playing it. There's the betas and stuff. So yeah, so everybody, thanks for watching. You know, I hope you enjoyed this little look at the beginning of Dark Souls 3. And it will, of course, be coming to PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Windows on March 24th. So I'm excited. Hopefully you are too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.